Today on the Hour of Power with Robert Schuller, acclaimed singer Ken Medema will have you reaching for the stars.
Rise up, the place where you've been lying. Rise up, and let me take your hand.
Also today, Pastor Schuller shares that the secret to happiness is to look at what you have, not what you don't.
There's so many times when we have to face the storms and the struggles of life that we always can say, if only I had 2 feet more.
Join us today on America's Television Church, the Hour of Power with Robert Schuller.
song that you get to help sing. You get to sing 2 words in this song. The words are rise up. Say them with me. Here we go. Rise up. Oh, you're wonderful. Now, the thing is, everybody knows that you sing better when your body is involved, right? Say right. Okay, so when you sing rise up, I'm going to ask you to rise up. Just put those hands right up there as high as they'll go. Are you ready? I will count you in. 1, 2, 3. You'll know when it's your turn. Here we go. Mama used to read me a story from the Bible about a beggar man who lay by the healing stream. Poor man had nobody to take him to the water. Broken body, broken heart, and broken dreams. Along came Mr. Jesus, strolling up beside him. All at once, they were having this little talk. When the talk was over, Jesus put his hand out and said, rise up, brother. Pick up your bed and walk. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Rise up, the place where you've been lying. Rise up, and let me take your hand. Rise up, walk this road together. You can lean on me, and I will help you to stand. Right. Days go by, weeks go by, nothing changes, everything stays the same. Who's gonna come to me? Who's gonna visit me? Who's gonna help me rise out of this bed of constant shame? Can you see me lying in the prison of my struggle, trying hard to find the healing stream? I may look together, but underneath my cover, there beats a broken heart with broken dreams. I don't guess Mr. Jesus comes strolling up beside me, sitting down to have a little talk. Ha! Wouldn't that be something? To hear old Jesus saying to me, rise up, brother. Come, let me help you. You've been lying. Rise up and let me take your hand. Rise up and we'll walk this road together. You can lean on me and I will help you to stand. 1, 2, 3. Rise up, the place where you've been lying. Rise up and let me take your hand. Rise up and we'll walk this road together. I will help.
Today I want to share with you some realities about health. Remember that when I talk about health, I'm not talking about only our physical realities. The season of Lent is a period of time before Easter. It starts on Ash Wednesday, and what most traditions do during the season of Lent is they give something up. And I know many people who will give up smoking during this period, and other people will give up a certain food or sugar or something like that. And I decided this Lent to just give up everything. Oh, it's absolutely miserable. It really is. But the good news about it is I decided to give it up just for a month. And the truth is, my doctor came to me and said, Robert, you need to do a detox. I said, okay. He said, how long do I need to do the detox for? He said, a month. I've been going through this thing and not feeling very good. But I did it because of two things. I literally chose February because it would be during the time of Lent. Time for us to focus on Christ, on His love and His forgiveness for us, and what He's going to do for us as we prepare for Easter, the resurrection, and the coming of Christ's glory and manifested in all of its splendor as He's resurrected from the dead. So that's why I chose this month. But what's interesting is the body wants to choose homeostasis. What does homeostasis mean? Homeostasis is a balance. And there is numbers to all of this balance. If you go to the doctor and you have a blood test taken, they'll give you, your blood test will give them numbers. And the homeostasis is a central line, and you're either have too much sugar or not enough sugar, but you have to have the right amount. And you either have too much cholesterol or not enough cholesterol, too much of the wrong cholesterol, too much of the good cholesterol. You have to have a solid balance. What we need to realize is that God has called all of us to find this place of homeostasis. Our minds want to find this state of homeostasis, and our spirits want to find this state of homeostasis. It's balanced. That's the definition of health. The man who was brought before Jesus could have very easily looked at his life and seen himself as the cripple he was. In the Bible, they refer to him as a child, or Jesus refers to him as son. Yeah, so I have the impression that he's probably somewhere in the ages of 12 to 14, a young man. And instead of looking at everything he didn't have, he looked at what he did have. He had good friends. He had people who cared about him. And under the circumstances, that's an incredible thing, because you have to realize anyone who is sick, anyone who is less than whole physically, is deemed to be someone who has sinned, and therefore this is the result of their sins. So illness was considered a punishment for their sins. So in spite of this stigma that he still had these wonderful friends. And they came and they brought him to Jesus. And Jesus made those words, "Your sins are forgiven." First and foremost, your sins are forgiven. And only then, after he had said that, did he turn to him, say, "Now, pick up your mat and walk." And by faith, he stood up, he picked up his mat, and he went home. Now, when I look at this story, I see three things that are very important for us to realize. First and foremost is that we have to look at what we have and not what we don't have. Secondly, I realize that it's imperative that we do not stop at the first time we face an obstacle. How many times do we go and we start and find an obstacle and we just say, well, forget this, and we go home? And thirdly, is that we live by faith and not by sight. Look at what you have and not what you don't have. If we go and we look at our society in which we live in, it's really easy for us to get in the understanding that enough is never enough and more is always better. If you've ever been on the ocean, you'll discover that no matter what size boat you're in, it's too small. I promise you, no matter what size boat, when you're on the ocean, it is too small. Therefore, they call it in the yacht world two-footitis. If only I had 2 feet more on my boat. Because it's never big enough. And you can apply that to your life. There's so many times when we have to face the storms and the struggles of life that we always can say, if only I had 2 feet more. If only I had just a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that. We cannot look at what we don't have. We have to look at what we do have and take advantage of our advantages. I went to school in Michigan, and this time of the year, it started getting really, really miserable. I mean, I would look outside, and I would look at the forecast, and it was, hey, we're going to have a high of 26 today. Whoop-de-doo, with wind chills down at 10 below zero. And so I'm praying for all you folk in those cold weather right now. The good news is, just hold on for about another month. Another month, and all of a sudden you get those spring days and those wonderful days, and you can go outside and you can get in the wilderness. You can be part of the beauty of that country. I fell in love with Michigan. I really did. I would go out and borrow my neighbor's canoe, and I'd paddle up the Kalamazoo River, and I would do all kinds of things. I became an outdoorsman. And I'd go out there and I'd see these loons. You know what a loon is? It's a specific bird. They're really a spectacular bird. But what's funny is to see them walk on land. They can barely walk. They kind of have to scoot. And then when you approach them in a boat or in a canoe or something, they can hardly get out of your way. They're so heavy, it takes them forever to take off. They take off kind of like the spruce goose. Have you ever seen pictures of the spruce goose taking off? It just goes and it goes and it goes, and you think, it's not going to take off, and all of a sudden it gets up off the air, and sure enough, it gets a little bit up. That's kind of the way they take off. And do you know why that's the case? It's because they have solid bones, and they're one of the heaviest birds for its size. And the reason it can barely walk is its legs are set too far back. And if all that bird did is look at its negatives, if all it ever did is look at all the other birds that are just taking off and flying around, if he tried to be those other birds, he would live a miserable life, but they live a great life. And how can such a miserable bird live such a great life? He looks at what he has and not what he doesn't have. As a result of having those solid bones and those legs set back in his body, he can dive deeper and faster than any bird. Like that, he can go down 20 or 30 feet and he can get his prey. If there's something that's coming after him, he doesn't try to take off. He doesn't have a chance. What does he do? He just dives. And they're tremendous swimmers. And they look at what they have and not what they don't have. And all of us have to do the same thing. This young man looked at what he had, and he said to them, or somebody said to him, we're going to take you and we're going to take you to Jesus. We've heard about this man who can heal people. We need to do the same thing. Where we have spiritual weakness, where we have emotional weakness, where we have physical weakness, we need to come to the realization and surround ourselves with people who will lead us to Jesus Christ. And there in his midst we'll receive his words. And it'll be the words we need. It'll be the words we seek. It'll be the words that are right for us. February 6th, 2008, we lost a dear soul. A dear friend, actually. I knew Ruth and Norman very well. My wife and I went to Pauling, New York, and participated in a conference they had there just for pastors. We did that about just a few years before Norman passed away. And at that event, I'll never forget the story that Norman shared. The story is about a time he was walking through New York City, and he saw this tattoo shop. And he was just kind of curious. He says, I walked in there and I looked around at the different tattoos, and I saw a tattoo in there that said, "Born to Lose." And he went to the man who puts the tattoos on people's bodies, and I said, do people literally actually have that tattooed on their body? He said, oh, yes, sir, they do. So why in the world would anyone ever tattoo "Born to Lose" on their body? And the man said, before tattoo on body, tattoo on mind. And how often do we have these tattoos that we have allowed society to place on our minds that prevent us from being the people that God has called us to be? And with that tattoo on our mind, we suddenly face the smallest little obstacle. And we turn and we go, gee, we couldn't get there. One of the things this story illustrates for us is the fact that we don't have to stop at the first obstacle. We can keep on keeping on. We can keep on striving, and that if we have the endurance to keep on going, that somehow we will succeed. One of the things this ministry has that I'm so proud of is our longevity and our history. One thing that I've inherited from my father is endurance. Tell me about it. Look at the endurance that guy has. He's been doing it now since 1955. How many years is that? 53 years. Here in this place alone. Before that, he did it for several years in Illinois. Endurance. I started in 1976. We just keep on keeping on. Sharing the message, breaking through the walls, letting people know you don't have to tattoo your mind with these negative thoughts. So let's eliminate negative thinking. Let's just wipe it from our minds. Let's live by faith and not by sight. Bruce Tillman shared a work entitled Christo Imperitu. And in there he tells a story of a woman who was in an institution for nearly 5 years, with depression. And after being completely destitute, not saying a word for anyone for years, she had a doctor come and visit her. A new doctor came in, and he introduced himself to her, and he said, hi, I'm Dr. Heaven, Heven. And she lifted her head, and she said, what's your name? It's the first word she said in years. And it was his first day on the job, so he didn't know there was anything special about this. I said, oh, it's Dr. Heaven, Heven. And all she could hear in her mind was Heaven. Heaven. And she went to bed that night thinking heaven. And thinking about a glorious, wonderful place and that she was in heaven. And wonderful thoughts started coming into her head, and she filled her mind with positive thoughts. And the next morning she woke up and was walking down the aisles of the hospital saying, this is the day the Lord has made. 5 weeks later, she was employed as a school teacher. When I heard the story, she had been employed for 14 years. Isn't that amazing? I had no way to test the validity of this story. I had to trust the work of Bruce Tillman, who shared the story. And after the first service, my mother came into my office and she said, Robert, where'd you get that story? So I said, I told you, I was in church. I got it from his message, Christo Imperitu. She said, do you know where that came from? I said, no. She goes, that woman was a member of our church. And all the facts weren't exactly right, because you have to realize your father shared this message years ago. And he must have heard it and incorporated it into his message, and now it's coming full circle all the way back. The real story is, she felt like she was in hell. She felt like that hospital was hell until she met her doctor. He said, "I'm Dr. Heaven." And she said to herself, if Dr. Heaven is here, then I'm not in hell. And that changed everything. Isn't that amazing? How many of us suffer from negative thoughts? Thoughts of greed or revenge? Thoughts of hatred or lust? Negative thoughts of, I can't do this and I can't do that. Thoughts of, I'm just born to lose, I'm not born to succeed. Thoughts of, does God care about me? Does Christ care about me? We suffer from physical illness. We suffer from mental illness and thinking negative thoughts, and spiritual illness. How many of us need to find the grace of Jesus Christ today?